Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It's February 15th, 2025. Let's talk heavyweights. Let's talk Jared Anderson, post-fight, Mario Kollias. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I have a former client. We touch base from time to time, and he was excited. This was years ago. I was texting him. I had a simple question. I had read on a page online that his group had signed Jared Anderson. So I texted him, and I said, hey, what can you tell me about Jared Anderson? And this guy who's understated, right? He's low key. He's the guy with power who pretends he doesn't have power. He just flatly told me that Jared Anderson was a future heavyweight champion. Right? Just understand that was the buzz around him. Here online, you can look up some of his amateur fights. He looks dominant. Right? You thought this is the future. You thought this was the next great American heavyweight. Now, after this Mario Kollias fight, you even have a Hall of Fame ringmaker, matchmaker from Top Rank, Jared Anderson's promoter, coming out and criticizing Anderson's effort. Right? The fight looked pedestrian. By that I mean Kollias is in front of Anderson in a way that he couldn't be in front of George Foreman. He couldn't be in front of Martin Bakole. He couldn't be in front of Joe Frazier. Right? He's there. He's pushing the issue. He's fighting a guy who was viewed as a former phenom. And he's not running. He's unafraid. Right? The best punch, by the way, of the first round is a counter by Kollias that almost takes off Anderson's head. In other words, you know early in this fight that Kollias is not backing down. Now, Jared Anderson out-hustles him. Anderson is talented, comes out the first round in a southpaw stance, comes out the second round righty. You notice he can throw hooks, he can throw uppercuts with either hand. He has a jab that's neglected. Let me just say that openly here. But he has a jab. He has swagger. In other words, he has a personality you can sense. So it matters to judges. It matters to promoters because you're aware of the fact that he's in the ring. Right? You are aware of what he's doing. Now, let me just offer a point of view here that I believe in 100%. People used to criticize me in the past when I was talking about Deontay Wilder as a future Hall of Famer, and I believe he is. Now, Deontay Wilder, by traditional standards, has an underdeveloped left hand, doesn't have the best footwork, can be out-hustled in fights. If a boxing match broke out rather than a slugfest, Deontay Wilder, who's one of the hardest punchers I've ever seen, that right hand is a sledgehammer. But Deontay Wilder could get roughed up. Right, there's certain fights he had that he won, where a Luis Ortiz landed some shots, a Chris Arreola landed some shots. Right? You know, some guys against him were in there landing some shots. And you thought, you know, Deontay Wilder's defense isn't that great. You know, if you were to just take his skills one by one, you might not be left with the impression that this was a Hall of Fame worthy fighter, even though he had the belt for 5 years. right? Even though he beat some damn good people, right? Luis Ortiz, at the time Deontay Wilder beat him, I had in my top 5 heavyweights fighting. But understand, a fight like this couldn't happen with a Deontay Wilder, because Wilder is hard to prepare for. A Mario Kollias wouldn't be able to be in the pocket, right? Stand there, not even, work his way into the pocket. Just stand in the pocket and fire back shots, right? Because you would understand that against a Deontay Wilder, the pocket is a danger zone. Wilder could literally end the fight on the next punch. Also, there's a spacing dynamic. Whether or not Wilder has great defense, you can't get too close to him. Right? You understand the guys who got close to him were taking risks, because Wilder's straight right is that lethal. Now here, Mario Kollias, every round, is able to stand right in front of Jared Anderson, who's not defensively blessed. Right, folks? He got hit so hard in the first round that there was a distinct possibility that he was going to get stopped. Now, Kollias wasn't able to follow through. It was the first round. So Jared Anderson had a full tank of gas and was able to survive the shot. But let me just say, he's in his mid-20s now. He's not defensively blessed. He's not going to get defensively blessed. I found that the fighters with great defense, they're developing that from early on. If your defense is as leaky as Jared Anderson's defense is, it's not going to improve materially. Right? It's just not. Now, that said, and let me break from the boxing public here, and I understand his own promoter is concerned. Right? But yesterday's fight was a stunning success. The reason it's a stunning success, and I know it wasn't even the headliner, right? The headliner was the Keyshawn Davis fight. Right? You're a heavyweight, and the headliner is a lightweight fight. Think about that. But just understand, Jared Anderson is marketable. Timothy Bradley, during the telecast, talked about how he was impressed by the effort Jared showed against Martin Bakole. Right? A fight here online in which I picked Bakole, who was the underdog in the fight against Jared Anderson. The reason why yesterday's fight was a success is because boxing needs opponents. I know this is going to sound hard, but boxing needs opponents. Right? An argument can be made that the biggest winner, I thought Jared Anderson won the fight, but the biggest winner on the card, apart from Keyshawn Davis, right, who picked up the WBO lightweight championship against an unbeaten fighter, right? The other biggest winner was Mario Kollias, right? Here's a guy who has heart, is standing in the pocket. He's enough of an opponent to excite a crowd, right? He shows up, he's bringing it. He's trying to get a stoppage. But he isn't scary enough to scare the favorite fighter's team, right? Just understand, if, let's say, a Daniel Dubois, who himself is not defensively blessed, gets by Joe Parker, and that's not the way I see that fight. If he needs an opponent and he doesn't want to fight, for whatever reason, other big names. Let's say he needs some time off because he's fought Ergovic, he's fought AJ, now he's fighting Joe Parker. Right? If he says, look, even this brother deserves a fight that isn't against the top line guy. Marios Kollias would give him an exciting fight. Right? The crowd would be interested in what happens when an opponent is unconvinced that he can't get a stoppage. Right? Kollias benefited greatly from his fight against Jared Anderson. I believe Anderson also benefited greatly because Anderson, had this buzz as being the next great American heavyweight. That was the buzz. But you can hit him. Right? He doesn't quite have the timing or spacing down. And he's in his mid-20s. Right? This isn't a 19 or a 20-year-old. He's in his mid-20s. So what you have here is a fighter with attitude, a fighter with charisma. He certainly has charisma. Right? A fighter with tools. You see him, he can, he's ambidextrous, he can throw power shots out of either stance. You see the talent. But it just doesn't add up to greatness. Right? So Jared Anderson is the kind of fighter who is enough of a name to bring a crowd. But he might not be enough of a threat to beat an elite opponent. Now, this is not how he was perceived when his career started. Right? Again, I was talking to my friend who's part of his team, and I was hearing about Jared Anderson sparring with Tyson Fury. Fury himself gave interviews where he said, hey, all Anderson has to do is to stay committed. Right? Stay committed, not get distracted by the rest of his life, focus on boxing, and he's a future champion. Right, folks? Sometimes for whatever reason, and I mean this, for whatever reason, all the talent just doesn't add up to greatness. Right? Jared Anderson is going to make a lot of money in boxing. Right? He has the nickname Big Baby, the real Big Baby. He's charismatic. America is starved for a heavyweight. You can't turn left or right in the UK without bumping into a world-class heavyweight. Without bumping into guys who might soon be acknowledged as world-class heavyweights. Lawrence Okolie, for example. Right? In the UK, you turn left, you turn right, you're bumping into the young guy who's supposed to be the next big thing, Moses Atama. By contrast, here in the United States, it's Richard Torres and it's Jared Anderson. Right? That's it for the 20-something crowd. You have some other heavyweights out there, but they're not viewed as having the potential to win the heavyweight title. Right? Now, Richard Torres is interesting. Southpaw doesn't look like he has much of a back foot. Right? You get the feeling that this might be a Mike Tyson type situation where the world suddenly catches up to him. Right? Jared Anderson looks like he has the skills, they just don't add up. Right? Martin Bakole, one of the problems with Martin Bakole, and Bakole is an elite heavyweight. Right? Bakole impresses me quite a bit. But one of the problems with Martin Bakole is he doesn't look like a great athlete. Jared Anderson does. Right? Jared Anderson, you get the feeling, would be much faster than Martin Bakole in a 100-meter dash. Right? Much faster. Jared Anderson looks like he's coordinated. He's just not coordinated enough to be on his back foot in the early rounds against Bakole, who there are stamina questions about. Right? Bakole is bone tired. in the Michael Hunter fight, toward the end of that fight. Even in the Tony Yoka fight, he could not maintain the pace that he set in the first 6 rounds of that fight. You thought a superior athlete in Jared Anderson would be able to force Bakole to move his feet. Instead, Jared Anderson is in the pocket, getting hit with uppercuts. Let me say, too, guys know the right things to say. And I'm aware of the fact that I'm sounding hard in this video. It is what it is. If we're talking about gambling, as I've said here repeatedly, this is not a fan club site. Right? We have to be open in criticizing even great athletes. Right? Jared Anderson, after losing to Martin Bakole, he's given interviews where he said, you know what? I need to listen to my corner more. Right? That's the, tagline. Right? I got caught up in the moment and, I lost sight of what I trained to do. The sad thing is you were watching him against Jerry Forrest. Forrest is an interesting guy. Right? He fought Zhili Zhang. That's one of the toughest fights Zhang has ever had, at least that I'm aware of. Right? He also fought, and looked good very early, Jared Anderson. Then Anderson blows him out. Right? But understand, in that fight, Anderson gets hit in the mouth and his game plan goes out the window. Right? How many fights are we going to have of Jared Anderson where he claims to have gotten caught up in the moment? Where he claims to have lost sight of his game plan? Folks, this is boxing. Right? Mike Tyson talks about how everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. Right? Jared Anderson, even now, is at a stage in his career where he, just isn't focused fully on the plan. Let me say, too, end of the first round of this fight, Jared Anderson goes back to his corner. He's talking to the corner player. It's a televised fight. If you didn't know, you're on ESPN Plus. Right? These TV crews have mics in the corner. Right? Just understand, Jared Anderson, starts sounding like Sonny Edwards. He says, hey, I don't want this fight to go the distance. Right? You wanted to say to him, hey, player, is that your choice? I mean, this is a professional boxing match. The other guy has a KO streak. He's here. This is his big break. He's in his 30s. You think the other guy is just going to lay down for you? Are you going to talk about what you're going to do, or are you going to show us by dropping the guy? Which Jared Anderson did not do. Right? So understand, yesterday's fight, and I know it's counterintuitive, made both guys a lot of money. If I'm Frank Warren, right, I'm looking at both guys, and I'm thinking, you know what, both of these guys would be great opponents for, plug in the name, right, Lawrence Okoli, who I think beats both of these guys. Other fighters in Frank Warren's stable, right, because you want a guy who is going to give a good performance. That's Kollias. Or you want a guy who looks like a better fighter than he is at the moment, based on his skills. Right? I saw Jared Anderson throwing some uppercuts in this fight, and I thought, oh, man, Anderson looks good. Right? But he couldn't leverage it. Right? This wasn't the guy who had the timing and sequence down to where he hits you with an uppercut and suddenly he's up on you, finishing you. The other thing, too, is he gets hit too much. Folks, this is still a home run hitter's era. right? If you get hit too much, how are you going to cope against a Daniel Dubois, a Anthony Joshua? We know how Jared Anderson coped against Martin Bakole. He didn't. Right? You see him, and, if I'm Usyk, why wouldn't I fight him? Why wouldn't I think that this guy is the perfect way for me to extend my brand into the United States? Right? A guy like Andy Ruiz would have to look at him and would have to say, you know what? While I'm not the best in terms of foot speed, this guy didn't stay away from Martin Bakole. Maybe this guy is not going to realize that I dropped AJ multiple times and that I'm not someone you can mess with in the pocket. Right? So, in conclusion, let's just say Jared Anderson at this stage of his career, in his mid-20s, is really more of an opponent than a principal. Right? If I'm him, if I truly believe, he talked about being retired by the time he's 26. Right? If I truly believe that I have world-class talent, then if my phone rings and it's Tyson Fury, who I've sparred with, right? It's Lawrence Okoli, right? It's Anthony Joshua. If I really believe that my skills are the best, right? And Anderson, paradoxically, looks like he enjoys boxing, right? You don't come up with the southpaw game that this guy has unless you have watched other fighters and you've spent a lot of time in the gym and you've worked on your coordination, right? If I'm Anderson, I take the call, right? If I'm Anderson, I realize, you know what? My game's not flawless. But if things work out a certain way, I have a chance to win. Right, folks? Daniel Dubois' game's not flawless. He's wearing a belt. He's making millions of dollars. He's in the spotlight. AJ wants a rematch. Right? Just understand, if Dubois wins against Parker, he has other multi-million-dollar fights. Ergovic wants a rematch. Right? If I'm Jared Anderson, I need to realize that I'm never going to be consistent enough to be the next great American heavyweight. Right? My game's going to be volatile. Right? I need to land before the other guy lands. My defense is never going to be airtight. Right? No one's going to confuse me with Lennox Lewis anytime soon. So if I'm him, I would swing for the fences. And of course, if I'm promoters, I would think to myself, you know what? I can make a very big promotion off this guy. Right? Because this isn't a Martin Bakole situation where, the other fighter's team is thinking, what's in it for us? This guy's dangerous. The public doesn't know who he is. We could lose this fight. Right? This is a different situation. This is the situation where you have a young fighter, you're looking at film and you're thinking to yourself, we can beat this guy. Right? This guy has holes. This guy's going to get distracted. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your thoughts in the comment section of this YouTube video. Jared Anderson is a young fighter with a lot of dreams on his way up. He's just not America's next great heavyweight, right? You know the way I think. I think the best American heavyweight is Zhilei Zhang. I understand for marketing purposes, Zhili Zhang's talking about Chinese power. Okay, fair enough. Right? I feel Zhang is the best American heavyweight. I think Deontay Wilder, who Zhang beat, is still a dangerous heavyweight. Right? When I'm talking about those guys, I'm not talking about Jared Anderson. Right? Richard Torres is interesting. But Richard Torres is just a tad too front foot. He's going to have to learn a back foot at some point to compete in this slugger's era. Understand, too, I mentioned Lawrence Okolie. Okolie's had one fight at heavyweight. I believe he won that fight by what? Was it a first or second round knockout? That's after, of course, dusting off Bridgerweight champion Lucas Rosansky in something like the first or second round. Right? Okolie is the technician. He has a great jab, and he knows how to hide a straight right hand behind it. He's about to fight Richard Riakporhe. All of these guys who were starving themselves to make cruiser are now up at the heavyweight division. They see the paychecks being handed out. Right? Just understand, if I'm Okolie's people, why wouldn't I want to fight Jared Anderson before he figures out the lay of the land? Right? When he's young, when he doesn't have the requisite defense, when a guy like Kollias can literally stand in the pocket round after round against him, right? Isn't showing a lot of lateral movement, isn't moving away, is literally coming out every round, and you know where he's going to be. You could put an X on the canvas. And Anderson, who has big in his nickname, couldn't keep him off the spot. Those are my thoughts. I look forward to yours. Thanks for stopping by.